Among the thousands of people that the Apostle Peter baptized was a man named Clement of Rome, who eventually became Bishop of Rome sometime after Peter was crucified. And Clement had two peers who were also of high standing in the church, Ignatius of Antioch and Polycarp of Smyrna. They were the pillars of the second generation of the church. And Polycarp took a keen interest in shepherding the church in Ephesus, and it was there that he taught and converted Justin Martyr. It was Justin Martyr who taught and baptized Tatian. And it was Tatian who first introduced Clement of Alexandria to the gospel. Clement was later baptized by Origen, who also baptized Gregory Thaumaturgus. And Gregory baptized Marcina the Elder, the grandmother of Basil the Great. Marcina passed the faith on to her grandson Basil, who was baptized in 357 AD, together with Eubulus and Posthumenius in Jerusalem. Later, Basil learned that Ambrose was baptizing so many converts in Jerusalem that he and Eubulus made a pilgrimage to bring him more baptismal garments. In 387 AD, Ambrose baptized Augustine of Hippo, under whose tutelage Proclus came to know the Lord. And on April 16, 404 AD, Proclus was baptized by John Chrysostom by immersion, along with 3,000 other new converts at Constantinople. Now, Chrysostom had been baptized in 367 AD at the age of 21 by Meletius of Antioch, who also baptized Hiladius of Auxerre. Hiladius baptized Amator of Auxerre, and Amator in turn baptized Patrick. And it was Patrick who baptized Macnis of Connor, and who later established a monastery at St. Colman, where Finian of Clonard was baptized by Aban Macu Cormaic. Finian later baptized Senel Macmeinig, and it was Macmeinig who founded Senel's School of Cleanish in Loch Erne, under the direction of Senel, son of Onich, who educated and baptized Columban. Columban baptized Gallus, who baptized Totso. Totso, who was the bishop of Augsburg before Simbert, the nephew of Charlemagne, held that position, established a monastery at Murbach, where Simbert was educated and baptized. And both Totso and Simbert were instrumental in the conversion of Charlemagne. And Charlemagne saw to the conversion of his son, Pepin, king of Italy. Pepin passed on his faith to his son Bernard, who in turn passed his faith on to the next 4 generations of de Vermandoises: Pepin, Herbert I, Herbert II, and Robert de Vermandoise. After these came Adele of Meaux, Ermengarde of Anjou, Judith of Brittany, Robert the Magnificent, William the Conqueror, Henry Beclerc, and Matilda of Normandy, who saw to the religious education of kings Henry II, John, Henry III, and Edward I. Edward saw to the teaching and baptism of his daughter, Lady Margaret Plantagenet, who in turn passed her faith on to Elizabeth de Seagrave, Eleanor de Mowbray, and Udo Wells, who was followed in succession by Lionel de Wells, Margaret de Wells, Robert de Moke, Edward de Moke, Francis de Moke, and Mildred Windebank. Mildred saw to the education and baptism of her son, George Reed, her granddaughter, Mildred Reed, her great-granddaughter, Mildred Warner, and her great-great-granddaughter, Mary Ball Washington, the mother of President George Washington. George Washington saw to the religious education and baptism of his nephew, Colonel John Washington, and John passed his faith along to his son, Colonel Samuel Walter Washington, his grandson, Lawrence Augustine Washington, and his great-grandson, Dr. Lawrence Washington, M.D. Dr. Washington taught his son, James Turner Washington, in the ways of the Lord, and James Turner, in kind, taught his son, George Patrick Washington, and his grandson, Paul Emery Washington, who passed away in 2014. Paul raised his daughter, J.C., in the church, and she in turn passed on her faith to her daughter, S.R. S.R.'s daughter, A.R., is in her mid-20s and takes her daughter, A.R., who is about 8 years old, to church regularly. Beloved, no one comes to salvation in a vacuum. No one comes to saving faith by information alone. The faith heritage of this little girl in Southwest United States has at least 68 participants in it. Now, when I preached on this before, I told you that the number was 63, but that was because I had confused Clement of Alexandria with Clement of Rome and it skipped 5 generations. But the numbers don't matter. The point is, every Christian within the sound of my voice listening to this message right now has a similar faith heritage. Now, you may not be able to trace it like the Washington family can, but it's there. And we know this because it has to be there. Whoever baptized you was baptized by someone else, who in turn was baptized by someone else, and so on, and so on, all the way back to the first generation. And that isn't conjecture. That's patent. Evangelism consists of much more than delivering information to people. It always has, and it always will. And that is my introduction for next week's lesson.